Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. If you haven't watched the movie, click off this video, okay? I don't remember if I said it in my actual chat, but spoiler alert, okay? Don't watch this if you plan to watch the movie. Well, hello, hello, hello. What's up, YouTube? It's your girl Nick with my first I say chit chat slash review for 2022. And today's topic is the Netflix movie called Passing. It stars Tessa Thompson and an actress named Ruth N. Ruth N. I'm saying N because I don't know how to correctly pronounce her last name. Ruth N. plays a character named Claire who's married to a man named Mr. Bellew. He's a white man and she's passing for white. Um, they have a daughter. I don't recall her saying how old the daughter was, but they have one daughter. Her name's Marjorie. Tessa Thompson plays a character by the name of Irene Redfield. Um, she's also married. She's light enough to pass for white, but she's married to a black man, a doctor. And they have two sons. She lives in Harlem, New York. The movie is set in 1920s New York. It's, those were the years of, I want to say, the Harlem Renaissance and stuff like that was going on. But, of course, things weren't good for people of color or black people. In the movie, they said they used the word colored. Negro and Claire's husband used the word nigger or nig. Okay, so I have more questions than answers. And I don't want this to be real long. I just want to chit chat. And if you haven't watched the movie and you have plans on watching it and you don't want anything to be spoiled for you because you plan to watch it, please click off this video now and go and watch the movie. But I'm hoping that those who continue to watch will get in the comments where we can have a really good discussion about the questions I'm going to ask or the questions I have for the movie and your thoughts. Like, did you have the same questions? Did you have the same, did you process it the same? So basically, Passing is the tale of Ruth Nega. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. So it's the tale of her character, Claire, and Tessa's character, Irene. And the fact that they are both light complected black women, or back then when you were light like that, they of course they said that you were mulatto because you probably were of black and white race, a mix of the race, biracial as we term it today. But basically it's just they grew up together, and at some point Claire um she moves away. So basically Claire's father died and she moved away with the white side of her family, which is her two white aunts. She was raised by them, and she met, of course, she was raised by them, and I'm guessing they raised her as passing for white since they were white women too. So she ended up meeting Mr. Bellew and marrying him and having a daughter, but he believes she's white. He doesn't know that she's passing. And they've been married for a number of years at this point because, like I said, they do have a child and stuff like that. And when Claire and Irene come across each other's paths, um, Irene doesn't even recognize Claire, but Claire recognizes Irene and approaches her and reminds her of who she is. And, they're growing up and stuff like that. Um, they go to, apparently Claire moved away with her husband, and they're there on business. He's a banker, and they're in New York on business. Um, she takes Irene to her room so that they can talk freely because they were out in the open and in a place where people assumed they were white. They were passing, And they didn't want the, of course, back then, you don't want them to figure out that you're black, and, it could be a deadly situation for them. So they go to Claire's hotel room or suite, and they're talking and catching up. And she's, that's when they let each other know, they've been married such and such and such. And um Claire lets Irene know that she's been living her life as a white woman. Her husband has no idea she's black or that she's biracial. Um he comes in and kisses her, calls her his pet name for her, which is Nig. Now that's the first thing that made my skin crawl. Cause I knew when I heard it, I knew it was gonna be short for the word nigger. And when he gave his explanation, and Claire had that tight, mortified, but trying to look like it doesn't bother me look on her face, because she doesn't want him to know that she is actually biracial. When he explains the nickname to Irene, Irene then says, "So what, you don't like black people?" He said, "No, I don't dislike them. I hate them." And Claire here, we don't associate with them at all. Um, this of course bothers. You can see it really bothers Irene. So she makes it her business to get out of there and leave. So she returns home and she tells her husband how she ran into her, and tells him about the whole thing. And some time passes by, and then she receives a letter from Claire, and she has no intention. Irene has no intention of reading the letter, so her husband opens it and he reads it as they're laying in the bed one night. You can tell from the letter, like Claire told Irene that she was super happy. Irene told Claire she was happy living her life as well. So of course, during those times, from what we know and what we've heard and been told, those weren't good times for people of my hue, of my race. Um, well, we are all human race, but people of my, I would say, ethnicity, because we, descendants of the slaves. But anyway, that wasn't a good time. This is just before some years before Jim Crow, but this is like not even 100 years after slavery was over and all that stuff. So it's not the best of times for black people or anything. And they didn't really go into detail of Claire and Irene's experiences growing up as being very light and living in New York City, and living among black people when those two were knowing each other. So who's to say what they experienced that led each of them to make the decision that they made on how they want to live their life? Irene with, I'm light enough, but I'm gonna live my life as a black woman and marry a black man. And Claire with, and then also you got to take into account her father died, so she was raised by two white aunts. Please forgive my hair in this video. You got to take into consideration she was raised by her two white aunts and led to live a life as a white woman. So anyway, they both talk about how happy they are in their lives and stuff like that. But of course, when Claire's husband was given his explanation for the nickname, for the pet name he gave her, um, Irene was looking at Claire's face, and she could tell that Claire was not okay with what he was saying and everything. She was playing the role. And when her husband read the letter to her that Claire wrote her when they were in bed at night, he tried to tell her she should have some compassion. That's what I got from it. He was trying to tell Irene to have compassion for Claire. She might not be as happy as she say, and from the letter you can tell that she's not happy. Um, Things aren't as good as she's saying. It's like, to me, she got more when than what she bargained for living that life of a white woman passing and everything. So at some point, Claire gets the phone. Irene gets the phone number and reaches out, and she comes in town and comes to visit with Irene. And as time goes on, she keeps coming to their house. As time goes on, and she's more around them even more, you see a change in Irene's husband. Irene's husband is a doctor. You can see there's a little bit of it's. They aren't on one accord as a husband and wife when it comes to their personal relationship. Just between them two. Even with their parents and their sons, there's a little bit of dissension because the husband, he likes to tell the sons about the lynchings and stuff like that that's going on. He feels like they need to know it. Irene feels like they should be sheltered, that they shouldn't know these things until they become an adult. The world's can be an ugly place, and she wants them to keep their innocence for as long as they can. But remember, in these times, they're lynching kids, they're sending kids to jail, electrocuting kids, and all that kind of stuff. So I get where the husband is coming from. He wants them to be prepared and know what's out there in the world or whatever. Also, the relationship between them two, it's like you see him trying to be intimate with her and be affectionate, and she's like pushing him away and stuff. So do with that what you will, but it leads to something else. As Claire continues to come around, also Irene lives well because of her husband's a doctor. They have someone that helps around the house, like a domestic. They have a domestic. Her name is Sue. Of course, she's a black woman. The more Claire comes around, you start to see the chemistry between Claire and Irene's husband. At first, we learn Irene's husband is not happy living in America. He wants to move and live in another country altogether. But Irene is against it. She wants to stay in America. Okay? So the more Claire comes around, Irene looks like a third wheel in her own house. In the scenes, you see Claire and Irene's husband, they all like this, and Irene is over here somewhere. Like a third wheel, basically. Even her sons are a little rude and disrespectful towards her, but they love Claire. They look for Claire to come when Claire starts coming around and stuff. And they go out to some social events. Irene works for a publishing house, and of course it's the 1920s Harlem and whatever. So like I said, Harlem Renaissance. So there's these parties and things like that they go to. And Claire goes to a party with them. Irene works for an author. His name is Hugh Wentworth. The first night that they took her out with them, I noticed she was downstairs. Claire and Brian. Brian is Irene's husband. They were downstairs waiting for Irene to come down. When Irene came down, they both talked about how nice she looked and stuff. But then we see Brian helps and holds Claire's jacket and helps Claire get into her jacket. But he doesn't do the same for his wife. She puts her own coat on, passes him a scarf and everything, they leave. When they get to the event that they're going to that night, Irene and her boss are sitting to the side. Claire wants to dance. Claire, she's bubbly. She's like the life of the party and stuff like that, right? So she gets Irene's husband to come dance with her. So he dances with her. Then he pawns her off on, like he's trying to, I guess he can sense that this isn't a good idea. How she's seemingly flirtatious and stuff like that. He passes her off to dance with someone else inside the party. And then she's dancing and he's across the room somewhere else. Irene and her boss, Mr. Wentworth, are having a conversation, and he's married. He has a wife there. Plus, he's older than Irene. He's an older man, but his wife, she looked kind of young. He said something about his wife as she's dancing on the dance floor with the black people as well. But then, they get into the conversation about Claire, and she basically, in so many words, lets him know that Claire is passing. She's not a white woman. And then they talk, and she says something to the effect of, in some ways, we're all passing in some form or fashion. So that's my first question. What did she mean by we're all passing? I rationalized that one, was she referring to the fact that she's passing as I'm making you guys think I'm in a happy marriage and in a successful marriage and everything, but I'm really not all that happy. My husband and I don't get along and aren't as well to do as outsiders looking in think. Because she also said, you can never judge a book by its cover. So I'm wondering if her passing comment was about that. And then also there was a moment when Irene was still standing there by the booth, and Claire came back across. No, yeah. Irene was sitting in the booth. Claire came back across the room, was leaning outside the booth with her back towards Irene, and she kind of put her hand behind her like this, and they interlocked their fingers like that. So I was thinking to myself, like, what was that? Like, and then you can see different scenes where Irene was looking at Claire, and I was wondering when she said passing, about we're all passing, I was wondering by the looks that she was when they were giving Irene's point of view, by the way she held Claire's hand, by the way she looked at Claire and her eyes roved over Claire's body and stuff like that. I was wondering, does Irene mean that she's passing as being straight? Like, did she have some secret desires to and want to be with Claire, or had a crush on Claire, or something like that at some point? I was thinking that as well. The movie goes on. Claire continues to come around, um, and it caused more dissension between Irene and Brian because they were out somewhere, and Irene's boss made a comment about Claire. Brian came to Claire's defense, and he had a lot of vitriol in his voice towards Mr. Wentworth, that's Irene's boss, about Claire when he was defending her. And Irene peeped that and was like, "You've never come to my defense like that." And she also mentioned that he seems to only be content with living in America when Claire is around. So she peeps the chemistry between them as well. Then there's a scene. They have some. No, it's a scene they talk about going to some kind of bridge party or something. Meanwhile, not meanwhile. All along, Claire is sneaking away from her husband while he's doing whatever in the business and coming in, hanging out with Irene and Brian. Claire had been talking about going to this bridge party or whatever that Brian and them was invited to. Um, Irene didn't invite Claire. Brian took upon himself to call Claire and invite her to this event. This particular night, Sue, which is the domestic that works for Irene and Brian, she was supposed to be there to watch the boys while they all went out. She didn't show up. So Irene stays home, and Claire and Brian supposedly goes to this event together and leave her home. Then you have a scene where they have some kind of meeting or party, a tea party, in Claire's house. And again, Claire and Brian are off to themselves. Irene is walking around serving people tea or something from a teapot. She notices them and she drops the teapot. And then her boss, Mr. Wentworth, come up behind her and help her clean up and play off the fact that she is annoyed or bothered by the chemistry that she obviously sees between Claire and her husband. She has a conversation with Claire one. No, she has a friend that's always at her parties as well. I don't recall what the lady's name was, but this is obviously a black lady. Irene and this black lady go shopping. It's almost Christmas. Irene and this lady go shopping in the city, and as they walking along, they hold their hands walking along, talking and laughing, and they bump into this man. And when he looks up and recognizes Irene, he says hi to her, and she is shook, silent, and hurries, grabs her friend by the hand, and hurries away from the man. Never speaks back to him. It was Claire's freaking husband. Now remember, he thinks Irene is white because Claire had her in their hotel room at the beginning of the movie. And supposedly Claire does not deal with or hang around any black people because she hates black people just like he hates black people. And of course, seeing her out and about with this black woman and they're arm in arm coming down the street, he gonna look, he gonna figure it out. He's gonna put two and two together. So anyway, that happens, and she hurries home, and Claire happens to come by one day, and they're talking, and the conversation gets to something, and Claire's we're different in a way. I admire you, Irene, for this thing, but me, I go for what I want. When I want something, I have to have it, and I'll do anything to have it. And then they have another conversation where Irene asks Claire, "What are you going to do, or what would you do if your husband ever finds out that you're actually black and you're passing? What are you going to do?" And she says that she would come and leave him and come move to Harlem and live with Irene, her husband, and her kids. So put that in the back of your mind. So the last segment of the movie, they are going to I think it's a Christmas party in some building. They finally get up the stairs and they're in the party. And once again, Claire is the life of the party. She's running around having fun with everybody, talking to everybody, and also all up in Brian, Irene's husband's face. You can tell it's bothering Irene still. So Irene goes over to this party was like on the 6th or the 7th floor of the building, of this apartment building. Irene goes over to a balcony window, or it has like the French open doors that open like this. So she goes over and she smokes out the window, and she's just standing there. As she's standing there and smoking, she's still watching Claire mosey around the room and stuff. And next thing you know, we get a bang at the door, and the voice says, "Is my wife in here?" And the person who answers the door says, "Your wife wouldn't be in here. This is a party with nothing but black people." And at this time, Claire stands still in the middle of the dance floor, and she eases over there next to Irene in the window. Now her back is to the window, the balcony. The husband barges his way into the apartment, and he goes towards Claire. And he's yelling at her, "You liar, you freaking liar, you dirty liar." And he's pointing at her face like this. Next thing we know, we hear music, and Claire is on the ground below. The camera pans to the husband's face of shock and horror, it seems. And everybody runs and leaves the apartment, runs down the stairs to go outside to see about Claire. The camera pans down to Irene's hand, and her hand is out Her hand is out like this, and her hand's like this, like she was holding holding Claire's hand, or something to that, or trying to protect her. I don't know. So this left me so confused because we never see her fall. We just see her on the ground outside in the snow. We only see through the husband's eyes, or her eyes, as the husband is standing over her. You dirty, rotten liar. Or whatever he was saying. But I know the word dirty and liar was there. My question is, did Claire, was Claire pushed by her husband or by Irene? Because it was mighty ironic that Irene had that damn window open and Claire came and stood right there. And then the husband found out exactly where they was. So these are my questions. Was Claire pushed? And if so, by the husband or by Irene? Or from the way we saw Irene's hand, was she trying to protect Claire and hold on to Claire and keep Claire from falling? Did Claire fall back? Backing away from the husband, was she backing away and fall back? Or did Claire fall back deliberately and kill herself because her husband found out that she was passing and she can't live like that with him knowing that she was passing? She doesn't know what he's going to do with her or do to her because he hates black people, remember. How did he find out exactly where they were? I'm figuring, I did wonder how he found out she was passing, but I'm guessing he figured it out once he saw Irene on the street that day. But how did he figure out exactly where they were to come in there? Did Irene set that up because she was sick of Claire and the obvious chemistry between Claire and her husband? And did she not try to save Claire and just let Claire go ahead and fall, or fall back deliberately committing suicide? Like, what are your thoughts and what are your questions? It's a lot to discuss with this movie, because wow. It gives you a different perspective on passing, because people think passing their lives were great, but not necessarily, because Claire was passing, but she wasn't happy. She wasn't happy at all. But these are my questions, my random thoughts, and my chatter for the movie Passing. It's on Netflix. You can watch it. I think it came out in November of 2021. You guys get down in the comments. Let's discuss this. Because do you guys have questions like I have questions? Do you have the same questions that I have? Or like, what's your theories about the movie? Even when I Googled the movie and the plot line, that is something that they don't give you the answer to, whether she fell, was pushed, or whatever. So it's up to you to determine for yourself what happened at the end of this movie. So that's it. That's all for this video. I didn't mean for it to go on for almost 30 minutes, but I always got to go into the details, and I take a long time to tell a story sometimes. But if you're still here at the end of this video, please click the like button. Please click the subscribe button. And get in the comments and let's discuss this movie if you've seen it. Okay? Talk to you guys in the next video.